The lights in the grand arena shimmered with colors that no human eye had seen before 3 years ago. Jake Murphy stood at the edge of the massive platform, rolling his shoulders to loosen the tension. Around him, warriors from a dozen different alien species prepared for the demonstration. Some had forearms. Others had scales that glowed in the artificial light. One creature looked like it was made of living crystal. Jake was just a human, 34 years old, 5 feet 11 inches tall, 180 pounds of muscle earned through years of training. He wore the standard Navy SEAL uniform, modified slightly for the space station's environment. On his chest, the American flag patch seemed small compared to the elaborate armor and insignias worn by the other warriors. The Council Station orbited Earth, a massive ring of metal and energy shields that housed diplomats from hundreds of worlds. Today, the Grand Unity Festival was being broadcast to over 4 billion viewers across the galaxy. Every species wanted to show off their warriors, their technology, their superiority. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood in the observation deck with other human officials. She was 52, with gray streaks in her dark hair and worry lines around her eyes. 3 years as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council had taught her that humanity was viewed as children, playing in a universe of ancient civilizations. "He looks calm," said Commander Ryan Blake, standing beside her. Blake was 45, with the kind of face that had seen combat and never forgot it. He commanded the USS Valiant, one of Earth's few military vessels stationed near the Council. "Jake's always calm," Grant replied. "That's why we picked him. But I don't like this. The other species look at him like he's prey." Blake nodded slowly. "They've been looking at all of us that way since first contact." On the arena floor, the announcer's voice boomed through translation devices. The being was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between blue and purple. "Welcome, citizens of the Galactic Council, to the Grand Unity Festival military demonstration. Today, warriors from across our great civilization will display the skills that keep our world safe." The crowd cheered. Thousands of aliens filled the observation stands, their voices creating a symphony of sounds that human ears struggled to process. The first demonstration began. A warrior from the Vexnar species moved through an obstacle course so quickly that Jake could barely follow the movement. The crystalline being seemed to phase through solid barriers, its body adapting to each challenge. The completion time was 8 seconds. Next came a Tholian, a species that could shift between solid and energy forms. The warrior completed the same course in 9 seconds, moving like smoke through the obstacles. Then it was the Kryn's turn. War Captain Zethar stepped forward, and the crowd's cheers grew louder. The Kryn were famous across the galaxy. They had dominated military contracts for 200 years. Zethar stood 8 feet tall, his body covered in natural chitinous armor that looked like it could stop bullets. He had 4 arms, each corded with muscle that seemed too large for even his massive frame. Zethar looked directly at Jake and smiled. It was not a friendly expression. His teeth were sharp, designed for tearing meat. The Kryn warrior approached the obstacle course. Unlike the previous competitors who had used speed or special abilities, Zethar simply smashed through every barrier. Walls crumbled under his fists. Metal beams bent. He finished in 7 seconds and the crowd went wild. "Now," the announcer said, "we welcome humanity's representative, Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy of Earth's Naval Special Warfare Command." The crowd's cheers became polite but quieter. Jake stepped onto the course and began. He didn't have the speed of the Vexnar or the shifting abilities of the Tholians. He couldn't break walls like Zethar, but he moved with a precision that came from thousands of hours of training. He used leverage to climb walls. He found the weak points in barriers and exploited them. His time was 22 seconds. The announcer's tone was almost condescending. A respectable effort from the human competitor, though of course their species is still quite young in terms of military development. Jake ignored the commentary. He had expected this. Humanity had been in space for only 3 years. Every other species had millennia of history. The demonstrations continued. Marksmanship competitions, tactical scenarios, strength tests. Jake performed well in most, excellently in a few, but he always ranked below the Kryn, the Vexnar, and the Tholians. The announcers made sure to point this out repeatedly. "The human shows determination," one announcer said, "but determination cannot overcome physical limitations." In the observation deck, Ambassador Grant's jaw tightened. "They're humiliating him." "He knew it would be like this," Blake said. "We all did. The final event was announced: close quarters combat simulation. Warriors would face each other in simulated combat scenarios using non-lethal training weapons. The weapons were designed to register hits without causing harm, their energy outputs carefully controlled. Jake was paired against a smaller Tholian warrior. The match was quick. Jake won by using grappling techniques the Tholian had never encountered. The alien had never fought someone who used joint locks and leverage. Then Zethar stepped into the arena. "I challenge the human," he announced in perfect Galactic Common, the universal language. The crowd went silent. Challenge matches weren't part of the scheduled program, but they were allowed under combat demonstration rules. Jake looked at the Kryn warrior. Every instinct told him something was wrong. Zethar's smile was too wide, too eager. But refusing would humiliate Earth on a galactic stage. "I accept," Jake said. They faced each other on the platform. Jake held his training weapon, a rifle-like device that would register hits with harmless energy pulses. Zethar held a similar weapon in 2 of his 4 hands. The referee, a neutral council official, checked both weapons. Confirmed. "Training weapons only. Combatants ready, begin." Jake moved immediately, using cover and staying mobile. The Kryn warrior advanced slowly, confidently. They traded shots, the weapons making soft clicking sounds with each registered hit. Then Zethar did something strange. He lowered his weapon for a moment, his lower 2 hands manipulating something on the device. It took perhaps 3 seconds. Then he raised it again. Jake noticed but didn't understand. Training weapons were supposed to be locked into safe mode. What happened next would change everything. Zethar aimed carefully and fired directly at Jake's chest. But instead of a harmless energy pulse, a solid projectile erupted from the weapon. The sound was different, louder, more violent. The round hit Jake square in the chest. His tactical vest's trauma plate caught most of the impact, but the force threw him backward. He crashed to the ground hard, pain exploding through his ribs. The edges of the round had fragmented around the plate, and he felt sharp agony in his shoulder and side. The crowd gasped. The announcers fell silent. Jake couldn't breathe. His lung had collapsed from the impact. Blood began pooling beneath him, warm and wet. The world started going dark around the edges. Zethar raised all 4 arms in triumph. "This is what happens to inferior species who pretend to be warriors," he shouted. The Kryn do not share glory with prey animals. Medical drones swarmed immediately, their sensors scanning Jake's body. In the observation deck, Ambassador Grant screamed. She was running toward the exit before anyone could stop her. Security personnel struggling to keep up. Commander Blake stood frozen for only a second. Then he was moving too, speaking rapidly into his communicator. "Get me secure comms to Earth, get me the Pentagon. Get me SOCOM, get me everyone. This is a priority Alpha emergency." On the arena floor, Jake lay motionless. His eyes had closed. The medical drones worked frantically, their mechanical arms moving with inhuman speed. One drone broadcast vital signs: severe trauma, internal bleeding, collapsed lung, cardiac stress. Zethar walked away from the scene, laughing. The other Kryn in the delegation joined his laughter. They saw nothing wrong with what had happened. The Galactic Council officials swarmed onto the arena floor. The head official, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish covered in eyes, spoke in Galactic Common. "This is unprecedented. War Captain Zethar, you are confined to quarters pending investigation." "Investigation?" Zethar scoffed. It was a weapon malfunction. These things happen in combat demonstrations. But the weapon analysis would later show this was a lie. The switch from training rounds to live ammunition required 3 deliberate actions. It couldn't have been accidental. Zethar had planned this. Ambassador Grant reached the arena floor and pushed past council security. She dropped to her knees beside Jake, tears streaming down her face. "Stay with us," she whispered. "Please stay with us." The medical drones suddenly emitted an alert sound. One of them broadcast new data. Heart rate stabilizing, subject regaining consciousness. Jake's eyes snapped open. They were filled with pain, but also something else. Rage. Pure, focused rage. He tried to speak, but couldn't. His collapsed lung wouldn't allow it. But his eyes found Ambassador Grant, and in them she saw a promise. This wasn't over. Commander Blake watched from the observation deck as they loaded Jake onto a medical transport. He had already sent a dozen encrypted messages to Earth. The wheels were turning now, faster than the Galactic. The medical bay of the council station looked like something from a science fiction movie, which Jake supposed made sense since he was actually living in one now. Machines hummed around him, monitoring his vital signs in ways that Earth doctors were still learning. His chest felt like someone had parked a truck on it, but the alien medical technology was keeping him alive. A doctor stood beside his bed, a being that looked vaguely humanoid but with gray skin and enormous eyes. "You are very fortunate," the doctor said through a translation device. "Your species has remarkable durability. The armor plate you wore saved your life, but you have severe injuries. Fractured ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding. You will recover, but it will take time." Jake tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The doctor handed him a cup of water with a straw. After a few sips, Jake managed to whisper, "Zethar?" "Confined to quarters under council protection," the doctor said. "There is an investigation. These things take time." Jake closed his eyes. In his mind, he could still see Zethar's smile as he switched the weapon settings. The bastard had planned it. Had wanted to kill him in front of billions of viewers just to prove a point. Ambassador Grant entered the medical bay, her face drawn and tired. She looked like she hadn't slept. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot," Jake said. His voice was rough but stronger. "What's happening?" Grant pulled a chair beside his bed. "The council has opened an investigation. The Kryn delegation is claiming it was a weapon malfunction. Their lawyers are already spinning the story. Zethar himself has been posting on galactic social networks bragging about how you survived by luck." Jake's hands clenched into fists, then relaxed as pain shot through his chest. "Tell me you're not letting this go." "Hell no," Grant said, and Jake was surprised to hear such raw anger from the diplomat. "I've been on secure comms with Washington for the past 4 hours. The president himself called me. He wants Zethar in human custody. The council won't allow that." "I know," Grant said with a thin smile. "That's why Washington isn't asking permission." Before Jake could respond, the door opened again. Commander Blake entered wearing his full uniform. He looked at Jake and nodded. "Good to see you awake, Lieutenant Commander." "Sir?" Jake said. "What's the situation?" Blake glanced at Ambassador Grant, who nodded. He moved closer and spoke quietly. "Every special operations unit on Earth is spinning up. DevGru Delta Raiders the 75th. We have 12 SEAL Team 6 operators already on the Valiant and Ranger. More are being fast-tracked up the orbital elevator as we speak." Jake felt his heart rate increase. The monitors beeped faster. "Sir, are we going to war?" "No," Blake said. "We're going to get justice." "There's a difference." In Virginia, at Joint Special Operations Command Headquarters, General Paul Hendricks sat in a secure conference room. On screens around him were faces he had worked with for decades. Admiral Kate Morrison from Naval Operations, Colonel Danny Pierce from JSOC, the Secretary of Defense. Even the President was patched in. "Let's be clear about what happened," the President said. His voice was calm but hard as iron. "A foreign warrior attempted to execute one of our service members on live television, in front of 4 billion witnesses. We have video proof. We have weapon analysis proving it was deliberate. And the Galactic Council is moving at a speed that would make a snail look fast." "What are our options?" the Secretary of Defense asked. Admiral Morrison spoke up. "We can work through official channels, file complaints, wait for the Council's investigation. That could take months or years. The Kryn have money and influence, or," the President asked. "Or we handle this ourselves," General Hendricks said. "We have assets on station. We have been quietly mapping that station for 3 years. We know every corridor, every security protocol, every blind spot. We can get to Zethar and bring him back to Earth for trial," Admiral Morrison added. "Make it clear that attempted murder of an American service member has consequences." There was a long pause. Then the President spoke. "Do it, bring him home. Make it loud enough that the galaxy understands we're not prey animals. But General, I want minimal casualties. We're not starting a war. We're delivering a message." "Understood, sir," Hendricks replied. "Commander Blake has already begun mission planning with his SEAL teams. They'll move within 24 hours. Aboard the USS Valiant, Commander Blake gathered 12 operators in a secure briefing room. These weren't regular sailors. They were SEAL Team 6, the most elite special operations personnel in human military. Men and women who had operated in every hellhole Earth had to offer. Lieutenant Ben Carter, 31 years old with the kind of eyes that missed nothing, stood at the front of the group. So we're really doing this? Grabbing an alien warrior from a heavily guarded space station? That's the mission, Blake confirmed. Zethar is in protected quarters in the diplomatic section. Council security is guarding him. They think we'll work through official channels. They're wrong. He brought up holographic displays showing the council station's layout. We've been mapping this place since we arrived. Every maintenance tunnel, every sensor blind spot, every security rotation. Today we use all of it. Senior Chief Lisa Hayes, 38, and the team's electronic warfare specialist studied the displays. Council security isn't military. They're trained for diplomatic protection, not combat. But there are a lot of them. Then we'll need to be fast, said Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, 35, who led the extraction element. In and out before they can coordinate a response. Blake nodded. You'll have full mission authorization. Rules of engagement. Non-lethal when possible, but you're authorized to defend yourselves. Whatever it takes. The objective is to bring Zethar back alive to face trial on Earth. One of the operators, a younger SEAL named Kyle, raised his hand. Sir, what happens after? The Council is going to be pissed. The Kryn are going to be pissed. Are we ready for that? That's above our pay grade, Blake said. Our job is extraction. Let the politicians worry about the fallout. But yes, we're ready. Earth's entire fleet is moving to high alert. If the Kryn want to make something of this, they'll find us prepared. The operators began detailed planning. Routes were memorized. Contingencies were developed. Weapons were checked and rechecked. They had 16 hours until the mission launched. On the council station, Zethar sat in his quarters, watching replays of the shooting. He felt no guilt. In Kryn culture, strength was everything. The human had been weak, and Zethar had exposed that weakness. The fact that Jake survived was unfortunate, but didn't change the fundamental truth. He posted another message on the galactic social networks. The human claims to be a warrior but needed armor to survive one shot. Send me another, and I will finish what I started. That message was intercepted by Earth's intelligence services within seconds. It was forwarded to every military base on the planet. If there had been any doubt about the mission, that message erased it. In his hospital bed, Jake watched the message play on a screen. Ambassador Grant had shown it to him, fury in her eyes. He's mocking you. Mocking all of us. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice soft but filled with iron. Let him mock. In 72 hours, he'll be sitting in a cell on Earth, and he'll have the rest of his life to think about what happens when you underestimate humans. Grant stared at him. How do you know 72 hours? Because I know my brothers and sisters in arms, Jake said simply. They're coming for him, and nothing is going to stop them. Back on the Valiant, the SEAL team finished their final briefing. Lieutenant Ben Carter looked at his teammates. They had trained together for years, had fought together, had saved each other's lives more times than they could count. Last chance to back out, he said, though he knew none of them would. Not a chance, Lisa Hayes replied. They shot one of ours. We're getting payback. Marcus Webb cracked his knuckles. I've been wanting to see if Council security is as good as they claim. Time to find out. The youngest member, Kyle, looked nervous but determined. This is going to start something big, isn't it? Probably, Carter admitted. But some things are worth starting. Justice is one of them. Commander Blake entered the room one last time. The mission is approved at the highest levels. You launch in 8 hours. The diplomatic shuttle will get you past station security. After that, you're on your own until extraction. Questions? Just one, sir, Carter said. When we bring Zethar back, what happens if the Kryn come looking for him? Blake's smile was cold. Then we'll show them what happens when they mess with humans. But that's not your concern. Focus on the mission. Get in, get him, get out. We'll handle whatever comes next. The operators dispersed to prepare. Blake watched them go, feeling a mixture of pride and worry. These were the best warriors humanity had produced. If anyone could pull off this impossible mission, it was them. But he also knew this was a turning point. After tonight, Earth's relationship with the Galactic Council would never be the same. They would either earn respect or make powerful enemies, maybe both. In his quarters, Zethar settled into his bed, confident that Council protection would keep him safe. The humans would complain through official channels. Eventually, some minor punishment might be issued. A fine, perhaps, maybe a formal apology. The diplomatic shuttle left the USS Valiant exactly on schedule. To anyone watching, it was a routine personnel transfer. The Council Station Traffic Control barely glanced at the flight plan before waving it through. Diplomatic vessels had automatic clearance. It was a courtesy extended to all member species. What Traffic Control didn't know was that the 12 people aboard weren't diplomats. They were SEAL Team 6 operators, each one carrying enough concealed weapons and equipment to start a small war. Lieutenant Ben Carter sat in the pilot's seat, though the shuttle was flying itself on autopilot. He watched the massive Council Station grow larger in the viewport. It was 50 miles of rotating metal and energy shields, home to thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. Somewhere in that maze was Zethar. 5 minutes to dock, he announced quietly. Behind him, the team performed final equipment checks. Each operator wore what looked like standard Council maintenance uniforms. Senior Chief Lisa Hayes had hacked the station's personnel database 3 hours ago. As far as the computers knew, they were Tholian technicians responding to a fabricated coolant leak in the diplomatic quarter. "Everyone clear on the plan?" Carter asked. "Crystal," Marcus Webb replied. His element would secure the extraction route. "We hold the corridor and make sure nobody follows you out." "I'll have the station's security system locked down in 90 seconds after we dock," Lisa Hayes added. She had spent 3 years studying Council technology. Tonight that knowledge would be tested. The shuttle docked with a soft thump. The airlock cycled open. The team moved out in 2 groups, walking with the casual confidence of people who belonged there. Council Station security saw a dozen maintenance workers and paid them no attention. They split up according to plan. Lisa Hayes and 3 operators headed for a secondary security station. The rest moved toward the diplomatic quarter where Zethar was being held. Hayes reached the security station first. 2 council guards sat inside, monitoring camera feeds from across the station. They were a species called the Venturi, tall and thin with skin like polished wood, good at security work because they were patient and detail-oriented. Unfortunately for them, they had never faced humans who specialized in infiltration. Hayes approached the door and spoke in perfect galactic common. "Maintenance. We have reports of a power fluctuation in this sector." One guard checked his console. The fabricated maintenance report showed up exactly where it should. "Come in, but be quick." The moment the door opened, Hayes moved. A small device attached to her wrist fired 2 darts laced with a fast-acting sedative. Both guards collapsed before they could react. "Security station secured," she whispered into her comm. "I'm in their system now. Give me 90 seconds. Her fingers flew across the alien interface. 3 years of practice made the difference. She found the surveillance system and began uploading a virus she had designed specifically for Council technology. Camera feeds throughout the diplomatic quarter started showing looped footage. To anyone watching, everything appeared normal. "Cameras are blind," she announced. "You're clear to move." Carter's element reached the diplomatic quarter without incident. The corridors were empty at this hour. Most diplomats were asleep. But ahead, at a reinforced security checkpoint, stood 4 Kryn warriors. The Kryn were massive, even by their species standards. Each one was 8 feet tall with 4 arms and natural armor plating. They carried weapons that looked like they could punch holes through walls. Carter signaled his team to halt. They pressed against the corridor wall, staying in shadows. He studied the checkpoint carefully. 4 guards was more than intelligence had predicted. Someone was taking Zethtar's protection seriously. "We can't take all 4 quietly," whispered Kyle, the youngest operator. "We don't need to," Carter replied. He activated his comm to Lisa Hayes. "Can you trigger a false emergency alert in the Kryn section? Something that requires immediate attention?" "Already on it," Hayes replied. 30 seconds later, alarms began wailing in a distant part of the diplomatic quarter. The Kryn language voice announced a containment breach in their environmental systems. 3 of the 4 guards immediately left their post, running toward the alarm. 1 remained, looking uncertain. Carter and Marcus Webb moved together. They approached the remaining guard from different angles, moving with the kind of silence that came from years of training. The Kryn never saw them coming. A taser dart hit his central nerve cluster, carefully researched weak point in Kryn physiology. The massive warrior dropped like a puppet with cut strings. 1 guard down, Carter reported. Moving to the door. The door to Zethtar's quarters was sealed with a genetic lock. Only Zethtar's DNA signature could open it. But Lisa Hayes had anticipated this. "Give me 45 seconds, she said, working frantically. "Their security is better than I expected." Those 45 seconds felt like hours. Carter and his team stood exposed in the corridor. If anyone came along, the operation was blown. Got it, Hayes finally announced. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Zethar sat watching holographic displays. He was viewing replays of himself shooting Jake Murphy, clearly enjoying the footage. He turned when he heard the door, reaching for a weapon on the table beside him. Carter was faster. A flashbang grenade flew through the air, detonating with a blinding flash and deafening boom. Zethar roared in confusion. Then 3 taser darts hit him simultaneously, targeting the nerve clusters Hayes had identified in her research. The massive Kryn warrior crashed to the floor, his forearms twitching uncontrollably. Package secured, Carter said into his comm, feeling a surge of satisfaction. They had him. Then every alarm on the station began screaming. We've got a problem, Marcus Webb's voice came over the comm. A Kryn diplomat triggered a silent alarm. Council security is responding in force. I count 30 guards converging on your position. How long until they arrive? Carter asked, already moving. 2 of his operators grabbed Zethtar's unconscious body, 1 arm over each shoulder. 90 seconds, maybe less. Lisa, we need an extraction route now. Hayes pulled up station schematics on her stolen console. There's a maintenance tunnel 80 meters from your position. It'll take you to the lower levels, then to a service elevator that goes directly to the hangar. 60 seconds until contact, Webb warned. Carter's team moved fast, half dragging the massive Zethar. The Kryn warrior weighed at least 400 pounds, but adrenaline and training made them strong. They reached the maintenance tunnel entrance just as the first council guards rounded the corner behind them. Energy weapons fire lit up the corridor. Carter's team returned fire with carefully aimed shots targeting weapons and limbs. The orders were clear, non-lethal when possible. But they weren't going to die being polite about it. Flashbang out, shouted one operator. The grenade bounced down the corridor and detonated, buying them precious seconds. They dove into the maintenance tunnel, sealing the door behind them. Marcus Webb's security element was already there, setting up a defensive position. They'll cut through this door in about 2 minutes, Webb said calmly. We need to move. The team ran through the maintenance tunnel, their boots clanging on metal grating. Behind them, they could hear the high-pitched whine of cutting torches. The council guards were determined. They emerged into a lower-level corridor. More guards were waiting, these ones from various species. Aventari, 2 beings that looked like walking plants and something that appeared to be made of living metal. Contact front, Carter shouted. His team immediately took cover behind structural supports. Energy weapons fire filled the air. What happened next would later be analyzed by military academicians across the galaxy. The SEAL operators moved with a precision that the council guards had never encountered. They used suppressing fire, flanking maneuvers, and room-clearing tactics developed over decades of Earth warfare. The council guards were trained for security work and ceremonial duties. These humans fought like war was a science they had perfected. 15 seconds later, every guard was down, unconscious or wounded but alive. The humans moved on without breaking stride. This is insane, Kyle muttered as they ran. We're fighting our way through an alien space station. Just another Tuesday, Marcus Webb replied, which actually made Kyle laugh despite the situation. They reached the service elevator. Lisa Hayes overrode the controls remotely and the doors opened. The team piled in with their unconscious prisoner. The elevator began descending toward the hangar level. We're not clear yet, Carter warned. They know where we're going. There'll be guards at the hangar. He was right. When the elevator doors opened, they faced a barricade manned by a dozen council guards from various species. The guards had taken cover behind cargo containers and were armed with heavy weapons. This is council security, a voice boomed in Galactic Common. Surrender the prisoner immediately. Carter looked at his team. Every operator nodded. They knew what needed to happen. Webb, take your element left through that side corridor. When you're in position, I'll hit them with smoke. We'll flank from both sides. Roger that. It took 30 seconds for Webb's team to get into position. Then Carter threw 3 smoke grenades into the hangar. Thick gray fog filled the space, reducing visibility to nothing. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this chaotic. Representatives from hundreds of worlds shouted at each other in dozens of languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the volume of angry voices. At the center of the storm stood Ambassador Lisa Grant, calm despite the fury directed at her. War Prime Korvan of the Kryn slammed one of his 4 fists on the speaking podium. The massive warrior's chitinous armor gleamed under the chamber lights. "This is an outrage! An act of war. The humans invaded Council Station, assaulted our people, and kidnapped a Kryn citizen. They must return Zethar immediately and face punishment for their crimes." Other voices joined his, some supporting Earth, most demanding action. The Council was divided, and that division threatened to tear apart 3 centuries of careful diplomacy. Grant waited for the noise to die down before she spoke. Her voice was quiet but carried through every speaker in the chamber. "War Prime, let's be very clear about what happened. Zethar attempted to murder one of my people on live broadcast, in front of 4 billion witnesses. We have video evidence. We have weapon analysis proving it was deliberate. We attempted to work through official council channels. After 72 hours, your delegation was still claiming it was an accident, and Zethar was posting messages bragging about the shooting." She paused, letting that sink in. "We will not wait months or years while the council debates. Zethar will stand trial on Earth for attempted murder. This is not negotiable. You have no authority," Korvan roared. "Return our warrior within 24 hours, or the Kryn fleets will consider this an act of war. You have one day, humans. Choose wisely." The threat sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Kryn military was the most powerful force in Council space. If they moved against Earth, it would be a massacre. Grant met Korvan's eyes without flinching. "If you want him, War Prime, come and get him. But understand this, we will defend our right to seek justice, with everything we have." While the council chamber erupted in arguments, Earth was preparing for war. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Constellation, humanity's largest carrier, watching tactical displays update in real time. Every combat vessel in the Earth Defense Force was moving into position around the planet. It wasn't much compared to major galactic powers, but it was everything humanity had built in 3 years. Beside her, General Paul Hendricks appeared via holographic link from the Pentagon. "Status report, Admiral? All ships are in defensive formation," Morrison replied. "Orbital defense platforms are powered up and ready. If the Kryn come, we'll give them a fight they won't forget. Can we win?" Morrison considered carefully. "In open battle? No, they have more ships, better technology, centuries of combat experience. But we're not in open space, General. We're defending our home, and we've got some surprises they don't know about." On Earth, Jake Murphy watched the news coverage from his hospital room. His chest still hurt, but he refused to stay down. When the Kryn ultimatum was broadcast, he called for his doctor. "I need to be released," Jake said. "You have fractured ribs and a collapsed lung that just started healing," the doctor protested. "You need rest." "My brothers and sisters in arms are about to go to war because someone tried to kill me," Jake replied. His voice was quiet but filled with steel. "I will not sit in a hospital bed while they fight. Release me or I'll walk out anyway." The doctor recognized that tone. He had heard it before from military personnel. There was no point arguing. "Against medical advice, I'm releasing you. But if those ribs shift and puncture something vital, don't blame me." Jake was already getting dressed. He had work to do. 18 hours after the ultimatum, long-range sensors detected the Kryn fleet. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Heavy cruisers and destroyers that had fought in countless conflicts across the galaxy. On the bridge of the USS Valiant, Commander Blake studied the tactical display. Fleet composition: 2 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, 2 support vessels, his tactical officer reported. Combined firepower is equivalent to— "Sir, they could destroy a continent." Blake nodded slowly. He had expected this. "Send out the alert. All ships to battle stations. This is not a drill." Across Earth's small fleet, klaxons wailed. Crews rushed to their stations. Weapon systems powered up. Shield generators hummed to life. Pilots climbed into fighters ready to launch at a moment's notice. Admiral Morrison opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Morrison. The Kryn fleet is advancing toward Earth. Our orders are to defend our planet and our right to seek justice for attempted murder. Do not fire unless fired upon. But if they attack, you are authorized to defend yourselves with extreme prejudice. Make them pay for every mile." In the Galactic Council, representatives watched the situation unfold in real time. Many were placing bets on how long Earth would last. The consensus was less than an hour. They didn't understand humans at all. The Kryn fleet advanced slowly, confidently. War Prime Corvan broadcast on all frequencies. Humans of Earth, you have 1 hour to surrender Zethar to our custody. We do not wish unnecessary bloodshed, but we will retrieve our warrior. Stand aside or be destroyed. Admiral Morrison's response was broadcast on every human channel and transmitted to the Galactic Council. War Prime Corvan, Zethar attempted to murder a human service member in cold blood. He will face justice. You are not authorized to enter Earth's defense perimeter. Turn back now. You cannot stop us, human. Maybe not, but we'll make you bleed for every mile. Is one murderer worth that price? There was a long pause. Then Corvan's laughter echoed across the channel. You have spirit, Admiral. I respect that. But spirit doesn't stop plasma cannons. Last chance. Surrender, Zethar. Morrison looked around her bridge. Every officer met her eyes. They knew what was coming. They were ready. Negative, War Prime. Come and take him. The Kryn fleet advanced. They expected the humans to back down at the last moment. Every species did when confronted with superior force. But these ships kept coming, holding their defensive formation with stubborn determination. At 50,000 kilometers, the Earth Defense Force opened fire. The humans had spent 3 years studying Kryn technology and tactics. They knew that Kryn shields were designed to deflect energy weapons like plasma cannons and lasers. What they weren't optimized for was kinetic weapons. Humanity had never abandoned the railgun. While other species moved to energy weapons, humans had perfected the art of throwing solid objects at ridiculous speeds. Railgun rounds streaked through space at a significant fraction of light speed, each one carrying more kinetic energy than a nuclear bomb. The first rounds hit a Kryn destroyer. Its shields flickered and collapsed. The solid projectiles punched through the hull like paper. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. The ship reeled, trailing debris and freezing air. On Corvan's command cruiser, the tactical officer stared at his displays in shock. Impossible! How do they have that technology? They don't, Corvan said slowly. They're using primitive kinetic weapons. But at those speed, he understood now. The humans had taken old technology and pushed it to new extremes. Return fire. All ships, evasive maneuvers. These humans are more dangerous than we thought. Plasma cannons lit up the space between fleets. Brilliant streams of superheated matter streaked toward the human ships. The USS Defiant took a direct hit. Its shields flared bright enough to hurt the eyes buckling under the impact but holding. Commander Ryan Blake, now commanding the Defiant, shouted orders. Shields holding at 40%. Target their command cruiser. All forward batteries, fire! A swarm of missiles launched from the Defiant. Each missile used evasive patterns designed by programmers who had studied every recorded space battle in galactic history. They zigged and zagged, making themselves nearly impossible to target. The Kryn point defense system struggled. 3 missiles got through. Explosions blossomed across the command cruiser's flank, tearing through armor and destroying weapon batteries. Damage report, Corvan demanded. Portside weapons offline. Shield generators damaged. Hull breaches on deck 7 through 9. The tactical officer looked terrified. Sir, they're fighting like demons. Every ship is moving independently. No predictable patterns. Our targeting computers can't get a lock. That was exactly how the humans had planned it. The Kryn fought in formation, organized and predictable. Humans fought like a pack of wolves bringing down a bear. Scattered, chaotic, but coordinated at a level the Kryn hadn't encountered before. The battle raged for 20 brutal minutes. Space filled with weapons fire, exploding missiles, and dying ships. A second Kryn destroyer was crippled, its engines destroyed. But the humans were paying a price too. The USS Achilles suffered a catastrophic engine failure and began evacuating crew. 2 frigates were destroyed, their shields overwhelmed by sustained plasma fire. On Earth, billions of humans watched the battle unfold. In homes, in bars, in public squares, people stood transfixed by the footage. Their military was outnumbered and outgunned, facing an enemy that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. And they were making the Kryn bleed. Jake Murphy watched from the Pentagon Operations Center, where the International Court of Justice in The Hague had never seen anything like this. The courtroom had been modified with alien technology to accommodate observers from across the galaxy. Holographic displays lined the walls showing translations in dozens of languages. Armed security from multiple nations stood guard at every entrance. Outside, thousands of protesters filled the streets. Some demanded harsh punishment for Zethar. Others argued that humanity was overreacting. The entire world was watching, and beyond Earth, so was the entire galaxy. Attorney General Diana Foster stood in her office reviewing her notes one last time. She was 49 years old with silver streaks in her black hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had prosecuted terrorists, war criminals, and corrupt officials, but this case was different. This case would define how the galaxy saw humanity for generations to come. Her assistant knocked on the door. "They're ready for you, ma'am." Foster nodded and gathered her files. She had spent the past week building an airtight case. She had video evidence, weapon analysis, medical testimony, and witness statements. Zethar was guilty. Now she just had to prove it to a watching galaxy. Zethar was brought into the courtroom wearing restraints designed to hold a Kryn warrior. He was massive, 8 feet tall with 4 arms and natural armor. But the restraints and 24 armed guards made it clear he wasn't going anywhere. Judge Patricia Lang entered, and everyone stood. Lang was 58, a former Supreme Court justice with a reputation for being absolutely fair, but merciless toward those who tried to manipulate her court. She took her seat and looked around the courtroom. "This trial will be conducted according to international human law," she said firmly. "The defendant will receive every protection and right afforded under that law. But make no mistake, this is not a negotiation. This is justice. We will discover the truth, and we will render a fair verdict based on evidence. Nothing else matters." The charges were read aloud. Attempted murder, assault with intent to kill, violation of diplomatic protocols. Each charge was explained in detail for the galactic audience watching via holographic broadcast. Foster stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, the prosecution will prove beyond any doubt that the defendant deliberately attempted to murder Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy during a diplomatic function. This was not an accident. This was not a cultural misunderstanding. This was cold-blooded attempted murder, caught on camera and witnessed by 4 billion beings." The defense attorney, a human lawyer named Richard Hayes appointed to ensure fair trial rights, argued his case. "Your Honor, my client comes from a culture where combat challenges are an honored tradition. War Captain Zethar believed he was participating in a warrior's test. He did not understand human legal concepts of attempted murder." Foster's response was immediate. "The defendant has participated in council diplomatic functions for over a decade. He knows galactic law. He knew exactly what he was doing. He simply didn't think humans would do anything about it." The first day of testimony focused on the video evidence. The prosecution played the footage of the incident from multiple angles. The courtroom watched in silence as Zethar deliberately switched his weapon from training rounds to live ammunition, aimed carefully at Jake's chest, and fired. A weapons expert took the stand. "The switch from training mode to live fire required 3 deliberate actions," he explained, using a holographic display to show the weapon's controls. "First, you must disable the safety lock. Then you must eject the training magazine and insert live ammunition. Finally, you must override the firing computer's safety protocols. This cannot happen by accident. The weapon logs show these changes were made 60 seconds before the defendant fired." The defense tried to argue weapon malfunction, but the evidence was overwhelming. The logs didn't lie. On the second day, medical testimony was heard. The trauma surgeon who had treated Jake described his injuries in detail. The projectile struck his tactical vest's trauma plate at center mass. If it had hit 2 inches to either side, missing the plate, Lieutenant Commander Murphy would have died instantly. The kinetic force alone caused severe internal injuries. This was not a warning shot. This was an execution attempt that only failed because of the armor plate. The prosecution showed scans of Jake's injuries: fractured ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding. The jury, 12 humans selected from various nations, looked increasingly angry. Then Jake himself was called to testify. He entered the courtroom in his dress uniform, walking slowly but steadily. The injuries had healed enough that he could move without a wheelchair, though everyone could see the careful way he held himself. He took the stand and was sworn in. Foster approached gently. "Lieutenant Commander Murphy, please describe the events of that day." Jake spoke clearly without emotion. He described the demonstration, the various competitions, the final combat scenario. It was supposed to be a training exercise using non-lethal weapons. I trusted that everyone was following the same safety protocols. What went through your mind when you realized War Captain Zethar had shot you with live rounds? Jake paused, choosing his words carefully. I thought I might not see my family again. I thought I had failed them by not being more careful. Then everything went dark. Do you believe the defendant intended to kill you? Yes, ma'am. Without question. The simple certainty in his voice was more powerful than any dramatic speech could have been. The defense cross-examined, trying to establish cultural differences, but Jake's answers remained consistent. I've trained with warriors from a dozen species since first contact. I understand different combat traditions. What happened wasn't a combat challenge. It was attempted murder dressed up as tradition. On the third day, the prosecution called a surprise witness. When War Prime Korvan's holographic image appeared in the courtroom, shocked whispers filled the chamber. The Kryn commander who had led the fleet to Earth was testifying for the prosecution. Foster approached the hologram carefully. War Prime, you command the Kryn military forces. Can you explain Kryn combat protocols? Korvan spoke slowly, each word deliberate. Combat challenges are an honored tradition among my people, but they require consent from both parties. Both warriors must agree to the challenge, understand the stakes, and accept the risks. Challenges are formal declarations of intent, not surprise attacks. What about during diplomatic functions? Absolutely forbidden, Korvan stated flatly. Combat challenges are never conducted during council oversight events or diplomatic gatherings. To do so would bring shame upon the warrior and his clan. Foster paused for effect. So what War Captain Zethar did, was that an honored combat challenge? No. The single word hung in the air like a death sentence. It was attempted murder masked as tradition. Zethar violated our warrior code. He brought shame to all Kryn. He is yours to judge. Zethar roared in fury, straining against his restraints. Guards moved in immediately. Judge Lang's gavel cracked like thunder. Order! The defendant will control himself or be removed from this courtroom. The outburst only hurt Zethar's case. The jury saw a violent being who couldn't control his temper even in a courtroom. The defense called its own witnesses, trying to establish cultural context, but the damage was done. When your own species' military leader testified against you, there wasn't much room for reasonable doubt. On the fourth day, closing arguments were heard. The defense argued for understanding and cultural sensitivity. The prosecution argued for justice and the rule of law. Foster's closing statement was direct. Members of the jury, the evidence is clear. The defendant deliberately switched his weapon to live ammunition. He aimed at Lieutenant Commander Murphy's chest. He fired with intent to kill. He then bragged about it on Galactic social media. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not an accident. This was attempted murder. And under human law, attempted murder carries severe penalties. I ask you to return a guilty verdict on all charges. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The world held its breath. When they returned, the foreperson stood. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of assault with intent to kill, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of violation of diplomatic protocols, we find the defendant guilty. Judge Lang thanked the jury and turned to Zethar. War Captain Zethar, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers of attempting to murder a human being during a diplomatic function. You came to our world, you violated our laws, and you showed no remorse. You believed humans were weak and would not seek justice. You were wrong. I hereby sentence you to 25 years imprisonment in a maximum security facility, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. You will serve your sentence here on Earth. The courtroom erupted in reaction. Some cheered. Others protested. The Kryn delegation sat in stony silence, but they accepted the verdict without official complaint. Ambassador Grant quietly negotiated an agreement with the Galactic Council. Zethar would serve his full sentence, but would be allowed communication with his people. After his release, he would be deported to Kryn space and never allowed to return to Earth or Council Station. The trial's conclusion sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Smaller species that had long felt intimidated by more powerful,